Vice President-elect Kamala Harris says she's going into work tomorrow, knowing that she's got a lot to do. Harris, a day away from becoming the first woman to become U.S. Vice President amid militarized and jittery Washington. Our special correspondent, Cookson, reports.
Kamala Harris was at a charity in Washington honoring Martin Luther King Day. By Wednesday, she'll be making history as the first female American vice president. She seems totally aware of the awesome task she and the new president face.
And we're going into Wednesday knowing that we're ready to do the work. And we've got a lot of work to do. It's not going to be easy. As we have discussed, Joe has outlined our plan for vaccinations, our plan for recovery, and in particular relief for working people, for families.
Smoke billows next to a highway close to the Capitol building. A homeless person's tent has caught fire. No threat to the Capitol, but it was enough for jittery security chiefs to order a temporary suspension of the inauguration rehearsals. I've been taking a walk around the Capitol Hill district to look at security almost 2 weeks since the deadly attack by Trump supporters. This is Union Station here in Washington, normally one of the busiest railway terminuses in America. At the moment it's absolutely deserted. All that we can see here are masses of security guys keeping things safe and keeping a watch on comings and goings here at the station, but this is quite unlike anything Washington's ever seen before. I'm still 2 kilometers from the Capitol building, and this is the first tier of security, just a simple police tape and concrete bollards. Now beyond that, no vehicles are allowed, just people on foot. This is the second tier of security, and it's a 2-meter high no-climb fence, and look at this on top, razor wire. Altogether, there are 13 kilometers of razor wire coverage around the Capitol building. And this is New Jersey Street, and this is the front line, in fact. This is as far as you can go, or members of the public and journalists can go, to this concrete block right here. Beyond that, the Capitol building. Now, Washingtonians that we've talked to say that they're happy with security. It makes them feel safe. You don't think it's overkill?
It may be overkill, but what happened on January 6th was definitely overkill.
Sadly, I think it's necessary considering what happened last week.
And I think it's better to be over-prepared than under-prepared.
If there's a credible threat, if the FBI thinks that the Capitol is going to get attacked, this is appropriate. This is America.
A sobering reminder of the Biden administration's first big challenge, hundreds of thousands of flags to honor Americans who've died from COVID. John Cookson, Arise News, Washington.
All right, now joining us from Washington is to have a more comprehensive discussion about the latest angle of the U.S. political story is John Cookson, Arise Special Correspondent. Welcome to the program, John. It's a pleasure to see you again, and a wonderful report, by the way, I should say. Make sense of what is happening. Just some days away now, in fact, less than 24 hours, I should say, the 20th of January, by 12 noon time, we're going to have a new president in America, like the Constitution says. Make sense of what is happening with all the pardons and the story that came out in the news yesterday that Rudy Giuliani asked as much as $2 million from somebody to get a pardon for him. I mean, make sense of the furore happening around.
Hey, good morning, guys. Great to be on the morning show with you. Well, look, with only 24 hours to go, there's an eager anticipation of a new era in this country, a period of healing from the madness, if you like, of the last 4 years. As you saw from the report, people here are very happy with the intense security. They'd rather have headlines the following day after the inauguration that the security was over the top than that a tragedy has happened. What I found most interesting is that there are 26,000 troops on the streets of Washington at the moment, and that's due to increase to 30,000 in the coming 24 hours. And if you imagine that there are 28,000 US troops guarding South Korea, you can see and they're guarding a whole country. You've got the same number of troops on the streets of the capital protecting the capital of the US. So we really are in very, very strange territory here. The other thing that I found interesting was that a lot of the National Guardsmen and women who are on the streets have been vetted, if you please, by the FBI as to their political leanings, which, again, is just an extraordinary development. And this has come about because the FBI have picked up intelligence that some of these right-wing groups may be able to get access to a National Guardsman uniform, and they might try to infiltrate some of the troop units that are on duty here. So we keep saying this over and over again, that these are extraordinary times, but I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. And as the guy said in the report there, this is America, and it's just over the top in some ways. And yet, at day's end, I mean, what the Biden administration wants to see tomorrow is a smooth handover of power from one administration to another, which in American terms is almost a sacred event in this country. Although it will be a virtual event, very much a TV event this time, and very different to anything that's ever been seen before, certainly in peacetime. The hope is that everything will pass smoothly, and certainly I can't imagine that any right-wing group or indeed any bad person would get away with anything tomorrow. I mean, they're just going to be whacked by the sheer force of the military and Secret Service that are on patrol here. Guys?
Well, it looks really like in all the state capitals in the United States, security has been ramped up, and tomorrow we probably will look forward to a hitch-free, relatively event. But President Trump is arranging for himself at 8 a.m. tomorrow at the Joint Base Andrews, well, what has been interpreted to be an elaborate send-off ceremony with gun salute and military salute, and with guests invited to see him off. Do you think that that's a sort of attempt to upstage the event at the Capitol steps at 12 o'clock? And will he succeed in having that elaborate farewell that he has arranged for himself?
I don't think, I mean, we know that Trump enjoys a military parade, and that's probably what he's going to get. We haven't got the full details of it yet. His day starts very early tomorrow, because there's a pardoning ceremony before he leaves the White House at around 8 a.m. Tomorrow. So what's that, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Nigeria time. And we can talk about pardoning in a moment, but after the pardoning ceremony there, he will then leave to, as you say, to Andrews Air Force Base on Marine One, and there will be some kind of military ceremony. Trump always, of course, a great supporter of the military, and the military like him. So I think they'll put on something of a show at Andrews Air Force Base, and then he'll take his final trip on Air Force One down to Mar-a-Lago, and who knows what future lies for Donald Trump. You might be asking, why can he take Air Force One? The fact is that he'll still be president at that time, because Joe Biden doesn't get sworn in until around noon. What's that, 6 o'clock Nigeria time. So he can command Air Force One and travel on Air Force One to obscurity or to whatever new life he has in store. Now, whether that's going to upstage Joe Biden, I don't think for any minute that will do that. It was obviously going to get TV coverage, but then the cameras will soon switch to the inauguration process on the steps of the Capitol building. So I don't think Trump is going to upstage. But look, any president leaving the White House, and one always remembers the scene of Richard Nixon leaving on Air Force One all those years ago, nearly 50 years ago now. It's always a poignant moment, and a huge television moment. So we will see that tomorrow, hopefully here live on Arise News. Guys?
Now, John, in light of all the current security reinforcements, which are very necessary as we would all expect, how long would we possibly expect to see it carry on after the inauguration day? And how much effect has it had on regular Americans' activities, daily activities?
You make a very good point there. If anyone thinks that this security, or level of security is going to go anytime soon, they're mistaken. There will be a high degree of security, not only here in DC, but in all the state capitals, because there are some very, very upset people in this country, people who have access to guns. There are 400 million guns in civilian control in this country, and one has the right to bear arms, generally speaking, in America. So there has to be concern about the future, and although an attack, I think, is unlikely tomorrow because of the level of security, who knows that might not come in the days or indeed weeks ahead. So this intense security, of course, will decrease here in DC, but there will be a huge degree of security throughout the United States in the coming weeks and months. And it's something which the Biden administration, I know, takes very seriously indeed. Remember, Biden got, 80 million votes, just over 74 million voted for Trump. It's a divided country, and people I've spoken to are still very loyal to President Trump, and we know that what damage some of the hard right can actually do from events on January the 6th. So America's going to stay on edge for a very long time to come, and those security arrangements will stay in place. Guys?
Right. John, real quickly, there was an incident of smoke seen at the in and around Washington yesterday, and that raised some panic alarm. I just want you to talk us through that. And secondly, it's a good thing you talked about Nixon, going out in the Air Force One about 50 years ago. But something also very symbolic about Nixon leaving was that once Nixon left the White House, he stayed out of public press. And in fact, he didn't come out until the first television interview he granted around 82 or 83. So do you think that Trump will just do that owing to the fact that, he's been impeached the second time and a lot of court cases hanging over him? Will he just lay low, or will he rally? Will he lay low like Nixon, or just rally his base? But the smoke incident first in Washington, and then the Nixon question second, John.
Yeah, just to quickly deal with the smoke, because it was a quick incident. A homeless person's tent caught fire, and it was only a kilometre or so from the Capitol building, and it's a city on edge, so that sparked the security alert, and the rehearsal for the inauguration was underway, and suddenly Secret Service men moved in and said, get out, go to safety, and there was panic just for a moment, and it's understandable given events on January the 6th and the level of security here. Now, Nixon, I think, is really interesting, and he, in a sense, having admitted in a TV interview eventually to David Frost some years later, as you mentioned, he did admit to deceiving and lying to the American people, and that was a big thing for him to say. And my own personal view is that Nixon kind of made his peace with America, he faced impeachment, wasn't actually impeached, he was pushed out when the Republican Party turned on him. And he was eventually pardoned by his successor. And indeed, that I have also a view that Joe Biden might just, as outrageous as this might sound, pardon Trump if it comes to it. And it's part of his way of healing things here in America. But Nixon, I think, he wrote some very erudite books after he left office, and although he left in disgrace, I think it wasn't possibly the black mark that would attach to the crime that he actually committed. Trump, I think, is in a different league. I'm not sure how he he's going to be reconciled in the future. But we don't know, what his future is. I mean, the thoughts that he might start up a TV station, remembering, of course, that he was a reality TV star long before he became president. But it's a very interesting question you raised there. Guys?
Well, John, two quick issues. The first is the first president in more than half a century, not to attend inauguration, because President Trump will not be there tomorrow. He will leave very early morning. He won't be the first president to do it, and he's also not going to receive the Bidens to the White House. He has also not invited them, and we're not sure he's going to leave any note behind for President Biden, as he would then be. Does it matter? In any case, it's the chief usher that will receive the Bidens to the White House. That's for one. Two, will you agree with the view that President Trump is leaving America and the world a more dangerous place than he met it? And if you agree, how?
Just repeat the last question again. The line's not great.
Hello? No, I was saying, will you agree with the view that Trump is leaving America and the world a more dangerous place than he met it? And how, if you agree?
Whoa, how long have you got? Longer than the morning show. Is he leaving things in a worse state? Well, as far as, for example, the Middle East is concerned, it's still a mess, but it has to be said that he was involved in a great step forward of reconciliation, peace deals between 4 Arab states and Israel, and he has to be taking credit for that. He kept Kim Jong-un in his box in North Korea, and remember that Obama told Trump that North Korea was the biggest problem that he was going to face of his presidency. As far as China goes, there's a mixed situation there, and China, in fact, is going to be a massive problem for Biden in the coming years. Its growth is just extraordinary, both in terms of economy and military. Elsewhere in the world, Africa, Joe Biden hasn't visited Africa since 2010, and maybe he will make a visit during his first term in office. As far as Africa goes, I mean, Trump was instrumental in helping with security there, putting more military in to keep the threat from the likes of Boko Haram and other terror groups down. As far as the American nation is concerned, don't forget, before COVID, the American economy was going gangbusters. I mean, it was doing really, really well. And so, but for COVID, America could have been in a much better place economically. Yes, overall, I would say that Trump, as far as the rest of the world goes, did leave the world in a better place. But America, which has to be the most important, is so deeply divided. And to that extent, history will judge him as being one of the most divisive leaders the nation's ever seen. Guys?
Yeah, I asked you about his snobbery of the Bidens. Will it make a difference if he doesn't show up, if he doesn't invite them?
Well, look, I mean, Donald Trump was never going to look kindly on the Bidens and indeed the Democrat Party. I mean, he is a one-off. I mean, he doesn't do things by convention. It is convention for the outgoing president to leave a note on the desk in the Oval Office for the incoming president. He's not going to do that. And he's staying away from the inauguration ceremony as well. And Mike Pence will represent him. Presidents who will be there, we know, will be President Obama, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush. Jimmy Carter, who's 96 now and not in the best of health, won't be at the ceremony tomorrow, which incidentally is going to be quite a glittering affair in terms of showbiz presence. Jon Stewart, the comedian, will be making an appearance. Earth, Wind and Fire, Nile Rodgers, Kathy Sledge, some Olympic athletes. Lady Gaga is going to sing the national anthem, and Jennifer Lopez is also going to sing on the steps of the Capitol building at the ceremony. So it's going to be quite an event. And then there's a star-studded spectacular on most of the TV networks, not CBS or Fox, but that will star Tom Hanks, John Bon Jovi, John Legend, and Justin Timberlake, all of them celebrating the arrival of a new Democratic president. Guys?
Now, Jen, it sounds like quite a fanfare is coming up for the inauguration. It's a good thing we're moving very slowly away from the unfortunately gloomy and anxiety-filled mood that accompanies this momentous occasion. But I want to talk about the Biden supporters in light of the inauguration, which is approaching. What is the general mood out there with regards to welcoming the new president of the United States of America?
Having been here for a few days now and talked to ordinary American folk, not politicians, not journalists, there's a great sense of calm descending on the country. Now, that's not to say they agree with all of Biden's policies, but they're supporting the man, if you like. He's nearly 80, but he certainly has a way of connecting with people, and he's got great speechwriters as well. He does terrific speeches, and his inaugural speech will be called America United tomorrow. It'll be broad brushstrokes about the country healing itself. There'll be nothing specific. Specific policies will come when he talks to Congress next month. But overall, it is this feeling of calmness, and Donald Trump seems very much yesterday's man. People are of the view that it was sort of years of madness, if you like, and they're very glad that he's off the scene. That's not, of course, everyone, but just in general terms, that's how people seem to feel. Guys?
I mean, John, we'll take a quick break, but let me just launch the question. I mean, you mentioned a man that is quite dear to my heart there will not be unfortunately attending because of ill health and old age, Jimmy Carter. And when you try to strike the symbolism, Jimmy Carter, too, left presidency at the time with a lot of uncertainty. We all remember the Iran hostage crisis and situation. And in fact, he negotiated up to the last day in office before he went back to Georgia, his home state. When you strike that symbolism with Joe Biden, he's coming into at a time of crisis with the COVID-19 pandemic. It is estimated that over 500,000 Americans would have died by February as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, what should Biden be, looking at doing strongly and radically? Because he's going to be judged by COVID, just like Trump's unfortunate Trump card was COVID. That's what it was judged by. We'll go to a quick break. We'll come back to you. You'll make sense of that insight. Thank you so much, John. We'll be right back. All right, you can see pictures there of the Capitol and Washington in general. It's just that picture before the dawning of another bright new day. And you can see the Capitol sleeping after all the ruckus and the rancor that has gone on at the Capitol. I mean, sort of like the symbolism of America's democracy there itself, standing tall amidst the dark skies of Washington. Right, John, we'll just come back to you quickly, and you just answer that question. Like I said, the symbolism, Jimmy Carter and Joe Biden getting in the time of crisis now.
Nice shot of Washington. Just a reminder, it's 2:30 in the morning here at the moment. But what a beautiful sight that was. Yeah, look, you're comparing him to Carter. I mean, Carter has not been judged well by history following that disastrous attempt to free American hostages after the Iranian Revolution in 1979, which ended with the deaths of several special forces in the desert in Iran, and in fact led to the downfall of Carter's presidency. I like to compare Biden more, perhaps, with Franklin D. Roosevelt at the end of the 1930s, who was leading America out of the Great Depression. The impact of COVID has been profound on this country, on the nation's soul and its economy. And so Joe Biden is, in a sense, leading the country out of that crisis, although there are huge logistical delays in the distribution of vaccines and the actual shots in the arm. It seems very slow here in America, I have to say. So I'd sort of look more towards Roosevelt rather than Carter. And Roosevelt, of course, was fondly remembered by millions of Americans for his terms in office. So that's how I would see it, rather than a comparison to say, Jimmy Carter. But you're right. He is coming in at a time of crisis for America, unlike Trump and other presidents. And he has a huge task. I mean, it's a massive agenda that he has to try to get through in the first 100 days in office. Guys?
Well, John Cookson, I agree with you absolutely. The comparison will be more with Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1933, coming into power against the background of the Great Depression. And the situation is just as challenging now with COVID-19. And it will probably tomorrow have a most unusual inauguration. But in terms of the inaugural address, which is very important, I mean, in 1933, every year talked about the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And that became a major line in American presidential speeches. What is Joe Biden likely to be saying to us tomorrow? What are your own expectations?
Yeah, the speech is called America United, and aides say that it won't be a lot different to some of the speeches that we heard from him on the campaign trail, which to my mind was slightly lackluster, you might say. I mean, his campaign was picked up more by the media, and they carried him forward. I mean, he didn't attract great crowds, and indeed he wasn't the first choice for the Democrats. But tomorrow we'll hear a lot about healing and divisions being smoothed over, and it will be a very calming voice that we'll hear. There may be specific references to events on January the 6th, but nothing too strong. It's going to be a softening feeling that we're going to get from Joe Biden. I understand there may be some surprises in the speech, but generally speaking, there'll be not huge specific announcements. Maybe a reference to the fact that he wants to change the immigration process here in America, and I would say good luck with that, because so many US presidents have tried to change things, including Obama, and didn't succeed. There may be reference to that because it's very important to Joe Biden. But again, I go back to COVID. There'll be assurances from Biden on COVID, and the reference I made a short time ago about some of the delays in getting shots in the arms of people. I mean, he'll address something like that and make all sorts of pledges. We already know that he wants to get 100 million vaccinations carried out within 100 days of taking office. There are skeptics who say that that's not possible in America with the way things are. So it's those two themes, I think. I think healing process, it's time for America to come together after the divisions of the last 4 years. References to COVID, how he'll promise to the American people that he'll turn things around on that. The economy, of course. And he may make reference to his immigration bill. Guys?
John, let's speak very briefly about Kamala Harris, who we have spoken quite thinly about in this discussion so far. Absolutely. What are Americans' expectations of her in the upcoming dispensation? Very briefly, if you can, please.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, she's already going to make history. First Black Asian woman vice president. I mean, you can't take that away from her. It's always surprising to outsiders like myself that America hasn't had a female leader. Compared with, for example, India or the UK with Margaret Thatcher, and it's a surprise. And so she breaks that barrier. She's obviously got charisma and a keen supporter of Biden's policies. I think they'll work well together. They're a great team. And I think, keeping things brief, I think things look good. I mean, it may well be that she may become the first female president of the United States. We'll have to wait and see on that.
Right. Many symbolisms for this administration. First female president, the oldest president. Prior to this time, Ronald Reagan used to wear that hat. And a lot of people said, oh, probably the age and wisdom of Ronald Reagan, held through and pulled the country together. And he built a mass following for himself. In fact, we had the concept called the Reagan Democrats. Are we going to see anything of such in Joe Biden? He's very experienced. He'll come into the office as the most experienced American president ever, too. So that doesn't come cheap.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in office in public service for 50 years. He was the youngest senator ever, age 29. And we spoke about this before. I mean, he has a heck of a backstory, this man. I mean, his life has been a huge challenge. It was his third bid for the presidency. He suffered personal tragedy all those years ago with the loss of his wife and daughter in a car accident, and then one of his sons died from brain cancer. And yet he's still there, and he still commands respect, of course, in American politics. I mean, generally speaking, I think he's going to be not an extraordinary president partly because of his age. I mean, there are certain realities here, but he certainly connects with people, and he has good speechwriters. So I think he's going to be judged moderately, but I don't think we'll see any excitement from Joe Biden in the coming years. But to my mind, he's the kind of person that America needs to have in charge in these difficult days, guys.
Yeah, quickly, it's good. Abby brought up Kamala Harris. You've commented on the symbolism of her emergence. But there's been some talk about Kamala Harris resigning her position in Senate. How important is that?
Well, she's done that because then she can concentrate on getting important bills through the Senate. And that's going to be a difficult task in some respects for the Democrats, because some of the big bills that they want to get through is going to need Republican support. And Kamala Harris will busy herself in the Senate and be very much in the engine room, driving through bills. So that's why it's important for her to concentrate on that role in the future. Excuse me. The immigration bill was, I think, the first big test of the Democrats, because what Joe Biden wants to do is to create a pathway to citizenship for 11 million illegals who are already in the country, first by getting them green cards, and then, if they meet certain criteria, qualify for American citizenship. That's not going to be an easy bill to get through the Senate, and Kamala Harris will play a big role in that. Storm clouds already on the horizon, 4,000 Guatemalans already on the move towards the US-Mexico border, and it's going to be one of the first big challenges of the Biden administration, the question of immigration, which is hugely important, and a lot of Americans are very concerned about, guys.
Well, thank you very much.